All right. Hey, everybody. We're going to start in 1 second.
Steve, what's your official title?
Deputy Advisor for Infrastructure.
Okay.
Mark, we're starting.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready.
Ready.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Fountain. I am just finished up with a very vibrant tax collection program. Sorry for all of you folks that had to pay your taxes, but we appreciate you doing so. And we also, my other role is as the Governor Lamont Senior Advisor on Infrastructure. Quickly, just to give you an overview, we have some slides about this, but Connecticut has a single coordinator for infrastructure investments, but we work really closely with DOT, DEEP, as well as DPH and our federal highway partners. We are not making decisions about which roads and bridges get done. We leave that up to the experts at DOT. We're here to assist. We're force multipliers. We are people that you can go to get answers. Just a quick note, we are recording this session. So if you have an objection to that, you can certainly log off now, and there'll be a transcript available later on. With us today, we've got some outstanding guests and I think a pretty interesting presentation. And I know that most of you are wrapped up in your budget cycle. You're thinking about how to get the mill rate down and where to cut and what to not, where to spend money and how to spend. I get it. I've been there. I know most of you that are on this call. I've been there for 20 years. But we want you to think about infrastructure because, as I told you last year, this is not a one-year program. This is actually a 5 to 6, maybe even a 7-year program, depending on what Congress does with this. So always be thinking infrastructure, always look for opportunities, contact us, contact Stephen, he's up next. Let us know how we can help you. I've been almost all over the state. I'm gonna go to Seymour a little bit later today. I was in Naugatuck yesterday. Love to look at your projects, provide both a former mayor's eye as well as a person that's pretty conversant in processes at the state and say how you can probably get some assistance, both either in federal or state money. And I'm fortunate enough to bring this stuff to the governor and say, hey, I think this is a great idea for a project. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Steve Nocera. He's our deputy advisor on infrastructure. We really started this program, Steve, from scratch. We were a greenfield, we call it, and we turned this into a real tour de force, not just in Connecticut, but across the country. In fact, in November, we'll have more about this later in the year, but in November, we're looking to host a infrastructure summit. We want to invite all of you there. It'll be in Hartford. I want you to come, bring your ideas. We're going to have panels, breakout sessions, as well as a job fair and vendors. So should be interesting for you. But today, we've got some great guests. We're going to try to keep this thing tight and right for you. With that, I'm going to pitch it over to Steve Nocera, and he's got just a couple of slides for you to kind of get us back into thinking about infrastructure. Stephen?
Hey, thanks, Commissioner. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. We're going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, write them down and we'll have Taylor sort of creating a line of questions for once all the presentations have been delivered. But I'm going to start with just a brief overview. Here's our agenda today. First, we'll start with introductions. As Commissioner Boughton mentioned, my name is Steve Nocera, and I have the pleasure of serving the state of Connecticut as Deputy Infrastructure Advisor. I support Mark and his team, and our goal is to make sure that Connecticut gets more than its fair share of the IJA funding that's available at the federal level. I'm going to quickly do an overview from our team's perspective of how we're hoping this runs for safe streets. I'm going to turn it back to Mark. We'll have Timothy Snyder from Federal Highway who's joining us today, deliver the meat of the presentation, which is a 30-minute presentation on, an overview of safe streets for all, safe streets and roads for all. And then finally, Jennifer Arenti is going to conclude with a presentation from DOT's perspective, and we're all going to be available after that for Q&A. So let's begin. Last year, we used a process that we're going to keep in place this year again, and the hope is to utilize the councils of government to or help us organize these applications. So it's going to stay the same
Morning,
with
this is
one.
Matt.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
Hey, how
If
are
you
you?
guys, awesome. If you guys aren't talking, if you mute yourself, I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for calling me back. I
Hey,
was
Matt,
just curious.
you're, we can hear you. There we go. Thanks, Ryan. Um, So with one amendment that DOT has asked us to make, and it's the same exact process. Everyone should submit to their COG for a review. We will then send things up to the state of Connecticut DOT for not a review, but to ensure alignment with their priorities. The only change that we want to make is if you're planning a project that is to do actual work in a state of Connecticut right of way or road, we want to get that in as quickly as possible so that they can review that a little bit more closely because obviously it'll affect the road that they own, right? So that's the one difference this year. Everything stays the same with an emphasis on the fact that if you're planning to do work in a state of Connecticut right of way, you should get on the horn to Pam and her team sooner rather than later. So that process will stay the same. I wanted to walk through some of the feedback we've heard from all of you as you've done your debriefs. And the first and primary thing is that you're going to want to use data to focus in on reducing serious and fatal injuries that are existing on our roadways. And we have some resources for everyone on this call that can get you some of that data and access to it. You also want to place an emphasis on communities that have been typically disadvantaged in terms of federal funding. And there's data available to show the communities have been affected by that as well. So we're going to have some resources for you, but if you're thinking of applying for Safe Streets and Roads for All, this is the highest and primary focus that USDOT has asked us to communicate that you focus on stopping and reducing serious and fatal injuries on our roadways. The other thing that we want to put an emphasis on is there's a new kind of a buzz term, shovel worthy, and that's, you know, it's not like ARA in 2008, for those of you who were around then, where we were just trying to get as much information out as possible and to get money in. We want shovel-worthy projects, projects that make sense to be focusing on to reduce those serious injuries. And then a bit of a departure from last year, they asked us to sort of de-emphasize the regional cooperation and focus on just people applying that with projects that make sense. So that's a little bit of a departure. We heard that feedback that they want applications to be focused in on, you know, if you have a high number of those accidents, that's great. Don't worry about the regional focus. Just put in an application. And then another thing that's interesting, it's a little bit of a difference in what we've heard from USDOT in the past is that temporary fixes are something that they're looking for. So not fully, but they, you know, want to see what are you doing right now to make improvements to for safety. So, and that could be cones, signage, bollards, whatever it is. And then with an eye toward once we get this funding and design, we're going to be doing these things in a permanent vein. So they want to see the now and the then in terms of your projects. And then the last thing we heard from aggregate feedback throughout the state for those who applied last year is that this year they're going to allow smaller scope projects and they've reduced the maximum amount. And Tim from FHWA will cover the specifics on the new amounts this year. Just to bring a little, you know, just a little focus in onto why this is such an important event. According to Connecticut DOT, there's some staggering figures. There's 239 passenger or driver fatalities this year, which is a large increase over the last 5 years, as well as 75 pedestrian fatalities, which is a 31% increase over the last 5 years. So the trend lines are going the wrong way. And this program is the answer. We want to deploy these funds to address this crisis in Connecticut and also nationally. Connecticut is not alone. Tim's going to share some national trend line numbers, and they're in the same vein as Connecticut. And we want to use these funds to make sure that this reality is addressed and we drive these numbers down to make our roads safe for everyone, including pedestrians, drivers, as well as cyclists. And then the last slide I have for you today is just an overview of who won last year. And so congratulations to all 6 Connecticut winners. You can see them here in their total amount. Connecticut was fortunate enough to bring in $2.4 million in aggregate. All of them are for action plans or supplemental action plans. So no implementation or construction grants this last year. And we're hoping to build on this success. We did have about 10 applications last year that went in that spanned 17 or 20, roughly 17 to 20 towns. So we had a good showing, and our hope from the Connecticut perspective is that we double or even triple that amount of applications this year. We want Connecticut to have a huge showing. Nationally, they gave out $800 million, or sorry, yeah, 800 million. And so there's actually some carryover money, and there's even more money this year that can go into these grants. So Tim will specifically cover that amount, but I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I'm going to kick it back over to Mark, and that's our goal is to be here to help you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or our team, and we're going to have a contact email for DOT as well as Federal Highway if you have those questions. So thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. Great job, Steve. We appreciate the hard work that you do. And just a couple of touch points that I want to just emphasize that Steve mentioned. I was guilty of and did go around all over the state saying, look, think regionally. That was the direction that we received directly from the White House implementation team. I think what they realize is that in their effort to get us all to think regionally, they actually box people out of putting in applications. So last year, they expected for Safe Streets for All about 2,200 applications nationally, and they only got 800. So I had a lot of conversations directly with the White House about, well, why did we only get 800? What's some of the problems? And so they are. What's great is they're constantly evolving these rules and regulations to meet the feedback that the coordinators across the country are giving to the White House and ultimately to the agencies that are involved at the federal level. So we'll keep you up on that. And today is primarily surface transportation, but don't forget, we also have broadband going. That's cooking along pretty good. And water line replacements cooking along good. And there's some other programs that are out there. Today, I'm going to be out of Seymour looking at a dam that we're replacing to allow salmon to swim up farther all the way up to Naugatuck. So cool stuff. So with that, let's get back away from fishing and back to highways and byways. Our federal partners are here today. Tim Schneider is with us. And I got to tell you something, when we first got appointed to this position, the first call I received was from our federal partners that said, hey, come on over. Their office right in Hartford, and we'll talk to you and share our thoughts and ideas and visions about where this program should go. I think these guys are terrific. When I was mayor, I kind of knew they were out there, but I didn't really know they were out there. What a resource that FHWA provides. And they're busy. They're very, 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 very busy, but they're certainly always welcome to take a call or to answer a question that you might have. So with that, let me throw this over to Tim. Tim, appreciate all you do for us here in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the words there. And thank you all for having me here. Again, as you've heard, my name is Timothy Snyder. I am the Discretionary Grants Program Manager for Federal Highways Connecticut Division Office. So that makes me a decent contact for many things. I will say before I start my presentations, there are some things I can't illuminate on or speak to in depth or give too much guidance on. When the NOFO is out there, we want to make sure that you use the NOFO and you respond to the language specifically in the NOFO. So what I'll try to do here is point out some of the salient aspects and focus some of your energies, hopefully, on where it's going to be most successful. Give me a quick second. You can let me know when my screen is. All right, hopefully that worked. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, it's coming
Okay.
through.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so let's just get started. We're talking about Safe Streets for All. This is the the fiscal year 23 rendition. As the bipartisan infrastructure law established the new Safe Streets for All discretionary program that provides $5 to $6 billion over a 5-year period. We're currently in year 2. The purpose of this funding is to support local, regional, and tribal initiatives to prevent, as Commissioner Boughton said, roadway deaths and serious injuries. As you can see here, we are following our typical pro rata of 80% federal with a 20% local match required. I'll go into some details about that local match in a little bit. The program is built on basically the development of a comprehensive safety action plan, if you don't have one already, and
Amen.
which.
Good.
Sorry. Okay. Which identifies the biggest safety problems, and through that effort creates a list of projects and strategies. And then the second part of this grant program is to implement those specific strategies and projects that will address the serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways. One of the other key aspects here is the safe system approach. That's sort of Federal Highways overall paradigm for how we're going to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes on our roadways and achieve our ultimate goal. All right. So just a quick overview. You heard some of this before from Stephen there, but the 2022 awards are out. We did get 6 action plan and supplemental action plan activity grants. Over the nation, there were over 500 communities selected for grant opportunities. We did award $800 million. And again, as you heard earlier, the action plan, most of the action plan grants that were applied for were awarded. So we were undersubscribed in action plan grants and oversubscribed in implementation grants. The good news on that end is that we are going to be able to utilize the additional $100 or so million from last year's funding and roll that into this year. So there's going to be additional funding available under the action and demonstration plan grant opportunities. All right. So again, as you heard, the challenge here is that our numbers are going in the wrong direction. Basically, since about 2009 or 10, our numbers have been going up. We've had many decades of declining fatalities and deaths and serious injuries on our nation's roadways. And then that trend has reversed and it's gone up quite dramatically, particularly over our past couple of years with COVID. So this is kind of the intent of the department's treatment, bringing the Safe Streets for All program to the nation, is to try to address that. Here in Connecticut, we're not immune to this. We've seen a similar type of trend with our numbers, both on fatalities and on pedestrian fatalities. I'm sorry, overall fatalities and the pedestrian fatalities are both trending in the upward direction. So programs like the Safe Streets for All are some of the ways the US DOT is addressing what the secretary has called a crisis on our roadways. So we are strongly, as you heard before, we are strongly encouraging every community to apply for these Safe Streets for All grants so we can work towards eliminating these crashes and save lives. So to address the roadway crisis, the department launched the National Roadway Safety Strategy in January of 2022. There's a link here available, but a few key elements I'll set out there for this National Roadway Safety Strategy program is it sets a vision of 0 lives lost on our roadways. So that's our ambitious goal to try to achieve that. It articulates and prioritizes actions that can be completed in the next few years to significantly reduce those fatal and serious injuries. And it's built on principles of the safe systems approach. I'll show you a quick slide on the next one here that talks about that. But it recognizes that we also can't do it all alone. Federal Highways, US DOT needs everyone to participate in this activity. That's the safe systems approach mindset. So we need government at all levels, law enforcement, industry, nonprofit, advocacy organizations, researchers, and beyond to do their part to try to help make our roadways safer for our people. As I mentioned, the Safe Streets for All, pardon me. The Safe Systems approach is the US DOT's guide to addressing our safety actions. The Safe System approach aims to eliminate the fatal and serious injury crashes and incorporates 6 principles listed here that accepts both that humans make mistakes and humans are vulnerable, but we should not die because of those things, and designs a system, an overall system with many redundancies in place to protect everyone. It works by building and reinforcing multiple layers of protection, both to prevent crashes from happening and to minimize the harm caused when those crashes do occur. Implementing the National Roadway Safety Strategy is arranged around 5 complementary objectives or elements of the safe system approach. You'll see them in the wheel to the left, and they include safer people, think behavioral activities and speeding intentions, safer roadways with better delineations, markers, super elevated to prevent people from running off, safer crosswalks, safer vehicles, crash prevention technologies within vehicles, safer speeds, again, controlling and reducing the speeds will eliminate the kinetic energy that identifies that humans are vulnerable, and if we can eliminate the amount of energy in a crash, we have a better chance of surviving it. And then finally, post-crash care. So when a crash does occur, to respond quickly and effectively and provide treatment to those people. Okay, so let's talk specifically about the Safe Streets for All grants. This is fiscal year 23. So as you probably all know, the Notice of Funding Opportunity is available. We call that a NOFO. That is open, and there's a you can access that through grants.gov. There's a link there. And again, these presentations, as my understanding, will be shared out, so you should be able to get all of these links. We're asking the technical questions, and basically any question be submitted by June 16th. There's an email address there that you can get hopefully a response out of that, but prior if you submit before June 16th. And then final applications are due by 5 p.m. on July 10th. We're re-emphasizing this year that late applications will not be accepted. I know there were some exceptions made last year, but the secretary has determined that they just can't accommodate late applications. So please do not wait until July 10th to get your application in. And then finally, I'll speak to this a number of times again, but the additional resources are Safe Streets for All website. If you just type in FHWA and say SS4A, you'll get it, but it's available here as well. And it has a massive amounts of information, guidance, checklists, and support, and frequently asked questions that will help you. Okay. So who's eligible to apply? Nothing too different here from last year's. They've provided a few more clarifications on the eligibilities of different applicants, but we're looking at MPOs, political subdivisions of a state, typically towns and cities, federally recognized tribal governments, and multi-jurisdictional groups are all eligible to apply. Note that the state DOTs are not eligible recipients, but they can be great partners to provide technical expertise in the planning and implementation process should you need that. Under eligible activities, again, as I discussed briefly before, the base is developing a comprehensive safety action plan. You have to have a comprehensive safety action plan to apply for an implementation grant. Parts of a safety action plan may be just to develop or complete an action plan. You might have pieces of it, but you might need to supplement it with some additional studies or planning. So you can apply for that. You can conduct what we call supplemental planning, which I'll speak to in a minute, or you can carry out demonstration activities. Again, I'll go into detail on that in a minute. Following that, there's also planning, design, and just pure development of those projects and strategies that you have identified in your action plan, and then ultimately implementing those through construction or deployment of the operational techniques or behavioral aspects. All right, so just briefly, this is the same as last year's, but the action plan components give more detail. The NOFO, I should say, gives more detail about the action plan components. I just want to provide this high-level perspective of the simplified overview, the action plan requirements include a leadership commitment to an aggressive reduction in fatal and serious injuries, and a structure to oversee and champion the action plan. After that, you need to have planning that uses data and analysis to identify community safety problems. The community then also engages with the public and other stakeholders in a process-oriented approach, and based upon all the information, a list of prioritized projects and strategies are developed to address the identified problem. And again, I'd ask you to reference the NOFO, and they also have some comprehensive checklists that are available for you to use to self-certify if you have an existing action plan, or to confirm that you have the appropriate components to qualify as an action plan. All right, so one of the things that we changed in this NOFO is they're not called action plan grants. I think one of the things that we've learned was that maybe was a little bit too prescribed on just that. We want to emphasize that supplemental planning and demonstration activities are also an eligible activity. The planning and the demonstration grants can be used for a bunch of things. On the left, you can see that the action plan is just, you can use it to develop in your comprehensive safety action plan and ensure it has all the 8 components required. Communities without one should definitely do that. Next, I want to just mention this about supplemental planning and demonstration activities. Supplemental planning are updates or can further elaborate on the components of an action plan. It can be updated or an existing plan, or taking a deeper dive based upon identified needs of the community. I got some possible things of that might be, you might want to do a speed study, or maybe you want to do an analysis of the health equity in your community, or do a safety-focused intelligent transportation systems implementation, or safety lighting, one of our EDC7 innovations, to provide adequate, proper safety pedestrian lighting on our roadway. So those could be supplemental planning activities that you might be interested in applying for funding to support. Also, we have demonstration activities. And again, we're trying to emphasize demonstration activities because the under assignment of our action plan grants from the previous year. So we have the additional funding available. And in the NOFO, the department makes clear that we're anticipating awarding $250 million specifically to fund demonstration activities. So we're very much encouraging applicants to consider applying for demonstration activity funding as well. So these are temporary in nature typically and are meant to test or pilot changes before you spend the millions of dollars on projects and strategies. Typically, demonstration activities should tie back to and inform the action plan, especially the list of projects and strategies for implementation. I will note that project level development, such as environmental reviews like NEPA, as well as preliminary engineering and design for specific projects in an action plan, are not considered supplemental planning or demonstration activities. These are activities that you would look to fund within an eligible implementation grant. So if you're looking to advance a project into design or do the environmental analysis and NEPA, that would be part of an implementation plan. So yeah, some quick demonstration activities would be building pilot temporary paint and bollards to lay out new lane roads, bike lanes. You can do mini roundabouts and things of that nature. Test them out with cones and barrels and paint before we do the infrastructure builds. So again, looking for those types of applications this year. So quick little summary example here from the previous one. This is just simply a community that submitted a application and was awarded a comprehensive safety action plan grant for their community. They did not have one, so this is where they went, and they're going to develop a safety action plan to advise what kind of projects and strategies they would implement to address their fatal and serious injury crashes. Another one here from Kalamazoo, Michigan, is also an action plan. And I'll just highlight this one to note that included both supplemental planning. So you can see that they're doing development of a sidewalk safety and a bus stop safety plan. So that's a deeper dive on a particular aspect of their action plan that they wanted to have some better knowledge and understanding on. They're also doing a lighting study, and they have some demonstration activities where they'll be installing mini roundabouts, a two-way cycle track, and protected bike facilities as pilots. And that will inform whether or not they like those strategies as effective in achieving the results that they want in a future implementation project. Okay, so let's move on to implementation grants. Implementation applicants who have an existing action plan, as I said, a qualifying action plan or components thereof in various documents, can apply for an implementation grant. Implementation grants must be used to fund projects and strategies identified in an action plan. That's the whole purpose. The action plan identifies the ones that we're going to fund. These should be pretty apparent because they've already been identified as a pressing need. Projects and strategies can be varied and can be infrastructural, behavioral, or operational in nature. So it does not necessarily need to be concrete and asphalt on the ground. We can look at technologies, operational aspects, and behavioral campaigns as well. As I mentioned, the implementation grants is also used to fund the design and development activities to advance the project to implementation or construction. Applications can include supplemental planning and demonstration activities as well. So your implementation grants can also include those activities to further inform your existing comprehensive safety action plan. We are especially, as I mentioned, encouraging demonstration activities in implementation grants. There will be applicants can bundle their activities together, and so the application can include more than one project in one location. However, your application needs to make clear how each activity addresses a specific safety concern. Okay, I'll move on from that one there. We got a couple of examples here. I think maybe just one. So this is Modoc County in California. It's up by the Oregon, Northern California, Oregon border. And what I wanted to show here is that this also includes supplemental planning to better define their current safety problem and be able to ensure that they're understanding the effectiveness of their program as they go on. So they're going to update their data sets and then do the improvement, do the implementation so that they can have a good understanding of what the benefit of the implementation was. And that'll help inform their action plan going forward further as to whether or not they want to continue that specific treatment or not. So again, these are just some thoughts as to what we've seen in previous applications. Okay, let me go through real briefly here some of the differences from the 22 to the 23 NOFO. Again, these are, I direct you to the NOFO itself. It'll give you all the details and guidance on this. It's not too tough of a read, not an entertaining one, but not too tough. So in general, what's new? The NOFO is still posted on grants.gov, but we've changed our application process and it will now be called through something called Valid Eval. You'll find that on the websites there. This should provide a clearer and more standardized structure for the application materials and make for a smoother application process. As mentioned, we changed the action plan grants to be planning and demonstration grants. This is just to better reflect the eligible activities that applicants can include in their applications. We further updated the definition of an underserved community to include some other data sources. And again, you can find details of that in the NOFO. And also the US DOT expects to make 2 announcements with this round. The first announcement will be in October 23, where they'll announce the initial planning and demonstration grants. And then in December, they will announce the implementation grants as well as some additional remaining planning and demonstration grant awards. My speculation is they're doing that to give some opportunity to get some of those planning grants started earlier so that they have more opportunity for future funding applications in the latter rounds. Also, so planning and demonstration grants, what's new with those? We've clarified some eligible activities with a new focus on demonstration activities. You'll see a lot of discussion in that and the dedicated funding that we have going towards those activities. The expected minimum and maximum award ranges have been changed. And again, I emphasize these are expected. They're more guides. But we're now the minimum award of $100,000 for planning demonstration grants up to $10 million. So those are a little higher on the $10 million, I believe, was $5 million last year. There's a longer period of flexibility for implementing it. We've also allowed for an increased section on the additional safety considerations narrative. You can now provide up to 2 pages for the additional discussion. Applicants are also encouraged to include supplemental planning and demonstration activities along with their application to create or revise an existing comprehensive safety action plan. So again, you're getting the message. Those are items that you are definitely eligible for applying for, and we encourage you to do so. Finally, yes, fiscal year 22, those 6 action plan grant recipients in Connecticut can apply for additional supplemental planning and or demonstration activities while they're still completing that plan. So they are not out of the water just yet. They can have an opportunity to come back in and request additional funding to further advance their action plan grants. I'm sorry, their action plan itself. On implementation grants, the expected award has also been modified a little bit. It's down $2.5 million to $25 million is the expected award. I think the 2.5 is slightly lower than the maybe 3 million we had previously. And the upper limit has been reduced from 50 million down to 25 million. Implementation grants are encouraged, again, is to include supplemental planning and demonstration projects in their applications. The DOT expects to make partial awards for just supplemental planning and demonstration activities in instances where the implementation grant applicants were unsuccessful in receiving a full award. So even if you don't get the full one, you may be able to receive some additional funding to help further advance your program. The list of additional considerations for award is in section E of the NOFO. And you can see some of the contents here of the things that we'll be looking when they're doing their selections. Some of the criteria and additional considerations they'll consider are listed out here. Okay, and then finally, I want to speak a little bit about some webinars and resources that are available. We have 3 webinars coming up in the next couple of weeks that I would highly recommend any interested applicants participate in. the action plan webinar, which now that I look at it, probably no, okay, it's action plans. So they're speaking specifically to action plans on April 26th. The supplemental planning and demonstration activities discussion will be on the 27th, and then implementation grants discussion on May 2nd. So again, please look to participate in those. I will say that we do record those webinars, and they are available on the link that you see below here. Again, Safe Streets for All, that transportation grants website. Lots of information, lots of great, easy to find links with good information. So all the webinars we do are recorded and they are posted there for your later use. And then finally, we have a good myriad of checklists and guides that further help support your development of your application and to identify any potential issues and questions, including frequently asked questions, common issues that arose during the fiscal year 22 cycle. So there's a lot of good content here, and I encourage you to review it and as you develop your application. And I think that is it. Maybe not as long as it was. I might have spoken a little fast. My apologies, Stephen and Mark. Yes. So if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to take them now, or if you want to, or we wait until the end.
Yeah, we're going to wait to the end for questions, Tim. Thank you so much. Again, great resource. I would encourage everybody to get somebody, I know you're busy, but try to get somebody in your office to attend those webinars because the information that they put out is really, really important. And it's been helpful to us to get our arms around it. We have also talk to CCM, just for the folks out there to know that they are hiring or have already hired 2 grant writing companies for those people that are looking for capacity. Maybe you're in a small town and you're like, look, man, I don't even have a town engineer. How am I going to do this? Get a hold of the folks at CCM. They're certainly able to help you, as well as DOT. And so up next is Jen Arenti. And now DOT can't write your grant, but they can provide some thoughts about how to get there. And that's one of the great things about that organization. They certainly want to be a part of what's happening in your community. They don't want to get in your way. They want to help you. Jen is a grant writer. She may have some ideas. I'm also going to be down in Washington next month. I'm going to get a presentation on successful SW4 grants and ones that weren't successful, not by name, but just across the nation. Why did this one get approved? Why didn't this one get approved? Because I think it's critical for me to share that information with everybody out there. Okay, so Jen is here. Let me just tell you about DOT. New commissioner, Garrett Euclid, awesome guy, good friend of mine, kills it, crushes it. The guy knows just about everything. He's also a very kind person, and he's just trying to keep all the plates spinning and get us going. I think the governor made an outstanding selection in Garrett. He leads a great team, and Jen is the integral and key part of that team. And after we're done there, then we'll open up some questions. We may not have the answers for you right now. Steve will write the questions down. If we have to get back to you, we'll get back to you in a day or two with the proper response, because we want to give you the best information possible. With that, Jen, you're on.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just going to share my slides. Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner, for that introduction. And thank you, Tim, for your presentation and the valuable information you provide on the Safe Streets for All program. Thank you to the Connecticut BILT team for allowing me to present today. Good morning. I am Jennifer Arienti. I am the manager of the newly established Grants and Socioeconomics Unit at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I work in the Bureau of Policy Planning, and I work for Pam Siccato, who is the Director of Policy and Intergovernmental Affairs. Today, I'll be providing general guidance on the role that Connecticut DOT will be playing during the Safe Streets for All grant solicitation, including the process for applicants to obtain support letters from Connecticut DOT. I will be providing general guidance, some resources, and our process for letters of support. So right now, I'm going to go over a guidance document that we prepared. It's a 2-page document with general comments and guidance, including helpful resources from municipalities and COGS based on our review of the 2022 applications that were submitted to us. We will drop a link for this guidance into the chat, and we will also send it to the Connecticut BILT team, and they can forward the guidance. The general guidance and comments provided on the slide are based, again, on the 2022 applications that we received and that our traffic safety team reviewed. I will summarize a few of the reoccurring comments that we provided, and they are also listed again in this general guidance document. First was maintenance responsibilities. A city or town will assume all maintenance responsibilities for the following constructed as part of the, if you are awarded the Safe Streets for All grant. Signs, pavement markings, including bike lane markings, snow plowing, new bump out areas, decorative streetscape features, and then a maintenance requirement may be required with Connecticut DOT for certain aspects of the proposed concept. The second is the manual on uniform traffic control devices and guidance. That is something that needs to be complied with. They're federal standards that require compliance. That includes proposed signs, pavement markings, and traffic signal work. New traffic signals that need to meet signal warrants prior to approval, design plans. And the Office of the State Traffic Administration, OSTA approval will be required for the installation of new signals and changes to signals owned by the municipality. The next theme that we discovered while we were reviewing the applications were requirements and considerations for work on state roads and routes. This includes work performed within the state's right-of-way. These will require an encroachment permit and may be subjected to Connecticut DOT approval. Bollards and speed bumps may not be allowed on state roads. Speed tables and bump outs will require further review, and approval will be required for signal modifications. The next theme and comments that we provided were on design considerations. We provided comments about considering including bicycle pavement markings at signalized intersections to facilitate left turns for cyclists, pedestrian facility design that complies with ADA and right-of-way, and consistent standards with respect to controlling factors such as traffic volume. And the last theme, which is just another reminder that Safe Streets for All grant projects are federal projects and they must follow federal requirements. We have listed some requirements, including NEPA, right-of-way, ADA, proprietary items, Buy America, which is new, contract bidding and award, construction inspection, and public engagement. Also wanted to remind you that Safe Street for All grants require a 20% local match, and these are reimbursable projects. Connecticut DOT cannot provide funds for a local match. So it's important when you are thinking of applying to know where your funding source will be for the local match. And the municipality COG will be the direct recipient of the grant funds. Connecticut DOT cannot apply. We are not eligible applicants. And if you are awarded a grant, the project will be administered under the Federal Highway Administration. On this slide and in the guidance are listed resources, several resources that we recommend for using or when you're preparing your grant application. The best resource is the Safe Streets for All website. Our best piece of advice when you're applying is to read the NOFO and then read it again. The NOFO contains what is required for the grant application, as well as the evaluation selection criteria. We recommend that you sign up for the webinars offered. They're on the webpage, and Tim previously mentioned those. Another resource that isn't listed but is incredibly valuable is your Council of Government. We recommend that you consult your COG before you do anything. They can provide guidance on your proposed project. This is just, again, a summary of the 5 reoccurring themes that we provided comments on when we reviewed the applications last year. This is, again, some suggested resources to use when planning and preparing your grant applications, and a reminder to sign up for the upcoming webinars. So now I'm going to get into the process for submitting applications, draft applications to Connecticut DOT for review and for support letters. It's important to note that CON-DOT will only be reviewing planning and demonstration grants and implementation grant applications for state roads and routes. However, if you are requesting a support letter for projects not located on state routes, we'd be more than happy to provide a support letter. The process that we will be following this year is we are requesting that you submit applications to this email. It's a shared email that we will be checking on a daily basis. And we request that when you submit the application, if you provide the following information: the municipality and COG name, the point of contact with contact information, a brief project description, the total cost of the project, the funding request being requested under the grant, and the source of the match and the amount of the local match. What type of grant are you applying for? Will it be a planning and demonstration grant, or will it be an implementation grant? And if the project is on a state or local road, if it is a state road, Connecticut DOT will be reviewing. We do request that you submit your request for letters of support by May 30th. However, if you want to submit it earlier, that's great. We encourage you to try and get this done sooner than later. It is a timeline for the support letter process. Municipalities and COGS will start drafting their applications as early as this week, going into May. By May 30th, we would hope to have all of our draft applications submitted to our agency so that we can review and we can provide a support letter. We will be reviewing during the weeks of June 5th, June 12th, and June 20th. Then we will be providing the support letters by June 26th, and a reminder that all applications are due by July 10th by 5 p.m. We will not be providing comments on individual applications, including on whether the proposed application is eligible for an award. That's not something that we can do. However, we will provide comments on grant applications that propose work on state roads if our traffic safety team identifies any major red flags or concerns with the proposals that are submitted to us. And at this time, I will turn the conversation back to the commissioner for a Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Again, we appreciate all the hard work that DOT does on this. It hasn't been easy. We are in the process of trying to hire up and fill a lot of positions at DOT as well, as I'm sure locally you all are. So we appreciate you taking time out and being with us here today. And certainly all of us should look towards putting together some kind of application and accessing these dollars. The federal government wants to give you money. They just need a little direction on how to give it. It can be complicated. So we're here to answer any questions that you might have right now. And then I can round this up with just a couple of quick thoughts before we sign off. So with that, Taylor Thorpe will moderate the questions. And Taylor, any specific way you want them to come in, or do you want to just kind of read them off and you can direct them to the appropriate person?
Yes, Commissioner. So actually the Q&A function is having some technical difficulties. So we're asking everyone to please use the raise hand function, and I will call on you, and then we will give the question to the appropriate person.
Great. So if you got a question, now's the time. Of course, you can always call us offline, but if you have a question, now's the time. Please raise your hand and Taylor will call on you and we'll try to help you out a little bit. Anybody have any questions?
All right, Matt Hart.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Matt Hart here. Thank you very much for the informative presentation today. I just wanted to touch on the local match for a couple minutes if we could. You know, we have heard from several of our towns, and I think other COGs have as well, that the local match presents a significant barrier. And I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do on a statewide basis to assist with that. You know, are we learning any key lessons from other states that may have developed some good approaches? You know, we have heard anecdotally that in Mass, the state is helping to fund the local match. So wanted to raise that issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm hypersensitive to that issue from my old role. And I know, particularly in our smaller towns, I know your process well. And once your budget is done, it is done. So it's hard for you to go back and tell the public, hey, I need $500,000 of dedicated funding to match this grant, although I don't know if I'm going to get the grant. I know it puts you in a bad spot, it puts you in a difficult spot. So It hasn't become ripe yet here in Connecticut, and I'll tell you why. It's because the Safe Streets for All, in particular, that program, all of those grants were for planning, and there wasn't really any implementation. Where the number really hits you is when it comes to planning. And I think at Torrington, I mean, when it comes to implementation, I think of Torrington, for example, they got a $200,000 grant. They had some money tucked away somewhere that they were able to match, so it worked out well for them for their planning. But that's not the case everywhere. We're aware of that. I need to build a case that I can go back to the legislature and say, this is going to be a barrier for us maximizing this program and not getting every nickel that our state should get. I think we're getting close to that. There are other states that have done some very creative and unique things. Louisiana, right, of all places, has come up with a program, and they put $50 million in it. I know Long Island has a similar program. Rhode Island uses a nonprofit offline, sort of like a version of Chamber of Commerce to help with the local match. So I've got thoughts on this. I'm working it hard. It's not ripe yet, but I think it's going to become quickly a problem, and I will be sharing that and have shared that with the governor. Obviously, they're wrapped up right now in current budget negotiations, but I don't even know if this can be off budget. I don't know if it has to be on the budget anyways. So there'll be more. We'll be talking to you more, I think, over the summer as it relates to that. But it's a problem, I guess is what I'm telling you. So I don't have a direct answer for you right now, but I will have something, I think, over the summer.
I really appreciate your attention to that, Commissioner, and anything we can do to help, we'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'll probably want to come to the executives, directors of the COGS first, run it by you and see what you think. And then we can socialize it out larger to your memberships.
Great. So Curtis Rand?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all, and good to see you. I'm First Selectman in Salisbury. We have two major state roads that go through our two villages of Salisbury and Lakeville, Route 44 and 41. We have an application into TRIP to complete sidewalks and make some of the affordable housing areas more accessible on 41 and complete the sidewalk on 44. So that's a TRIP application that we put through COG. I'm just wondering, and we did it in 3 phases. The first one is, quote, shovel ready. We spent, $50,000 on engineering for this. I just wondered if when TRIP, you may not know this, if TRIP doesn't find in our favor, should we switch over to this other program? I don't know if all that timing works for July 10th, but we do have, I guess I'm wondering about the relationship between the new TRIP program and this one. That makes sense?
Made sense to me. Who would be best to take that? FHW, you want to touch that, or?
I get it if you can't answer it, because TRIP's new, I think, so.
Right.
I think maybe DOT,
Steve?
Pam.
Yeah, I mean, hi, this is Pam Staccato. I'll try to give it a shot, Curtis. Yeah, TRIP is a new state-only funded program. I think it's fair to say, yes, if you didn't get a TRIP grant, this might be a good avenue to go through. Just keep in mind, the TRIP program was established because it created, it basically, I don't want to say created, but, you could avoid the federal rules by going through a state-funded only process through TRIP. So it's less cumbersome through TRIP than it would be, say, through Safe Streets for All. I'm not trying to discourage you from applying from Safe Streets for All, but
we just want to get, we don't have a history of pedestrian accidents, but it's a wonder that we don't. And we get a lot of demand for people to be able to walk safely on Route 44. So, okay, well, thank you very much.
Great. And one thing I just want to add into that, don't forget about your Congress people. Keep them in the loop when you're applying for these grants. I cannot, and neither can DOT, we can't advocate for you specifically. We can endorse it, but we can't advocate for it. I can't make calls into Washington and say this should get funded. Washington will call they call me, and I'm sure they have contacts on our DOT to say, is this a good idea? Should we do this? And sometimes we've had to say, well, we have some reservations about it. So we can say sort of no, but we can't say yes. So in your case, make sure you wire up your congressional delegation. Understand that there are communities in Connecticut that got significant amounts of money through congressionally directed spending. So that's another avenue for you, Curtis. And specifically, I think of Oxford, George Temple got $4.2 million to do sidewalks in his downtown from the federal government through a congressionally directed spending appropriation. So try to use, this is a deal where you try to use, you braid money together, a little bit of CDS, a little bit of Safe Streets, maybe a little bit of another program, and then voila, you've got enough money to do the project. So think creatively about that, but make sure you link those guys in. Anytime you send a federal application, call your congressperson. First of all, they want to help. And second of all, they can provide some juice. Our delegation in particular can provide some juice down in DC for you. Okay, other questions?
Yes, thank you for that, Commissioner. Jake Muller.
Thanks for having me. Jake Muller, Town of Ridgefield, Director of Purchasing and Facilities. Rudy and I watched or listened to the webinar. I thought it was really good. Just had a quick question on when we're looking to apply, do we need to start with the action grant or can we get right into more of a shovel-worthy, shovel-ready type project?
I think I can extend Steve chime in if you want, but it's both. Right, Steve, you can apply for either.
I think Tim should weigh in, but my understanding is as long as there's a safety plan in place, but I'll defer to Tim.
Right. You need your safety.
Yeah, so you need to have an eligible comprehensive safety action plan in place before you can apply for an implementation grant. So there's a checklist process that's in the NOFO that describes out the various components that we talked about. There's 8 basic components that you need to have. So if you go through the self-eligibility checklist and you can certify that you have all those components addressed, then you are eligible to apply for an implementation grant, which is to design and actually make changes in your community. But if you do not have one, then you should be applying for either developing up your own comprehensive safety action plan or to do the supplemental planning and demonstration activities that will result in a certifiable action plan. So yes, you need to have an action plan in place before you can apply for implementation grants. That's fundamental to the process.
Okay,
And I
great. Thank
think
you very
Tim,
much.
Tim, I think some of the grant, I think some people applied to do the safety plan and got funded. I thought in this last round. Is that
Oh,
possible?
yes. No, we awarded, well, we're working on awarding, well, they've been awarded. We're working on getting the obligations in place for all 6 communities, well, 3 communities and 3 COGs in the state got action plan grants. I think there are 2 supplementals in there. And again, that's just to take the existing documents that you have and do a little bit more detailed analysis and support to make sure it is a fully comprehensive action plan that can be used to support implementation grants in the future to implement those projects and strategies that are therein. So you need to have the strategies and projects in the action plan before you can go ahead. That's fundamental.
We were in Windsor a couple of weeks ago and we shared with that team that they've got some great ideas. I said, but they need to formalize that, get an action plan going. I said, but apply for the action plan. You've got a vision. And Torrington's doing the same thing. They're developing a safety plan that will then turn into implementation once they are able to formalize what they want to do. The chief's got some ideas, the public works director's got some ideas, the engineer has some ideas. So get it all together, put it in writing, and then develop your safety plan. So, but you can apply just to do that. So, next question.
Elizabeth Sanderson.
Okay, we must be getting to the end for the questions. Thank you. Was wondering about the action plan, the components. You mentioned that there were 8 components of the action plan. Are they different for round 2 than round 1? Is it the same self-certification worksheet as round 1, or has anything changed?
Tim?
I'm gonna be cautious on this one, Elizabeth. I think I'm gonna refer you to the NOFO. I'm not, the changes I
go with the NOFO.
highlighted and the beginning of the NOFO speak to those, the primary differences between the 22 and 23. I don't see anything in there that speaks to the action plan components being any way changed, but I don't want to steer you wrong. Take a look at there's a checklist that's got to be used regardless. Yeah, I would just direct you to the NOFO on that one.
Elizabeth, the link to the self-certification eligibility worksheet was posted in the chat by Danielle. Thank you, Danielle. So it's
Thank
there
you,
for you.
Danielle. Thank you, yes.
Anybody else have a question?
That's all we have in the chat.
All right, guys, let's go. Let's get those applications in. We did about 12 last cycle. Our goal is 40 this cycle. And keep us in the loop as to what you're doing. Just shoot us an email, let us know what you're applying for. That way I can also contact your relative congressperson and say, hey, Danbury's got an application coming in, or Ridgefield, and you should be aware of it, and here's what they're looking for. So I know it's a busy time, I know it's referendum time, it's budget time, it's all that stuff. But these are long-lasting positive changes that you can make in your community for little or no cost. So thank you all, and we'll see you in probably about fall. We'll do another one of these, update you on who got awarded what, and also on some of the other programming that's going on. I think it's probably a good time for a conversation on broadband, and we'll update you on where we are in that program. So have a great day, everybody. And special thanks to our guests. Thank you.